All right, so with that, let's take a look on the other spectrum of things. This is kind of more the direction you wanted to take it, right? So Strive has been in a little bit of a lull as well. We've gotten some life recently, right? We've gotten Sin, worst Nago basically character. If you want to be perfectly honest, is what he is with a DP. We got Sin, but then wait, Nago don't got no DP.
Yes, you do.
What's his DP?
HS with the slice up.
Oh no, but I mean on Wake Up.
Oh,
Like on Wake Up. Yeah, that's the only thing. He's worse Nago, but he's got a DP for Wake Up. That's all. Nago has.
If you're doing it on Wake Up, then you're just a god.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got, of course, the Arc Revo Japan happened. Shout outs, of course, to TY for winning it with Chip and Gio, actually finishing it off with Gio. That against is it Yobu?
Yes.
Gobu. I said Yobu. Yeah, Gobu. Zato Gold Lewis. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Which also his match against Infiltration was. Y'all ever want to just be stressed? Just watch a Zato mirror. That shit is so over the top.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was gonna say, Mez. I know you've been in that boat.
It's not fun. I mean, that or Zato versus Nago.
Yeah, either.
Which I did watch. That was
actually, we did. Yeah, I was gonna the infiltration against the Nago. I can't remember the Nago's name, but that was pretty fire because infiltration beat him to at least get and he got into.
Yeah, no, but it was really really rough.
Yeah,
like as a Zato player, is like remembering what it was like, and now how it's
a lot easier. It's literally a lot of like dancing, and then he gets he gets anything. It's like you might die. Like you just
it goes
die
either way.
Right there. Yeah,
it's like either one touches either. It's like okay, who's playing what game at this point?
Yeah, for real. So yeah, like I said, for Strive, Arc Revo, Japan went down. It was an awesome event. And we got some light at the end of the tunnel as well. We actually, at the end of the broadcast, we had some information that came up. The first thing that did come up, I believe the first thing that came up was the DLC character. I think that was the first actual detail we got, or the first kind of hint of something coming up. And that was, it was a very vague trailer, but of course, for those that played the second half of the story, where Sin was prevalent in, because he was like, there was a lot of missing characters from the story in Strive. They're like, where the fuck is Ran? Where's Sin? Where's Baiken? Where's all these other characters that just did not show up? Because it was very centric to Soul and Kai and those core characters. We didn't get to see anyone else. Not a lot of other characters anyway. Yeah, we got the pick of the quick shots of the railroad and Bed minus the man, just Bed. And for those that just watch the story and know, and especially if you talked about the little data mine leaks that we talked about last episode, it's gonna be more than likely Delilah. So that is the character that Baiken basically guarded over, and his Bedman's sister, and it was kind of like the main reason why things went down in that side of the world. More than likely, that's going to be the next Daredevil coming in March. Kind of like what I expected. I thought, with 3 legacy characters, like Sin is like the closest, you could technically call Sin a legacy character for the first 3, and then finishing the DLC, changing the cadence up, and having 2 new original characters is probably the route, for what I would guess, because it will still keep it to like how last DLC was, because it was like Gold Lewis to Jacko to Happy Chaos to Testament Baiken. Am I right? Baiken Testament. Baiken Testament. Okay, so technically it was 2 original to 3. No, yeah, I'm right. 2 to 3, right? Yeah, 2 to 3. Yeah. It was just the last part was a little bit mixed up.
Because Bridget.
Yeah.
No, that was just because she was wanted.
Yeah, and then Bridget came in, of course, as well as Sin for this one. So, wait, it's just Bridget and Sin? No one else came out, right?
Yes, Sin. So
Correct.
Bridget and Sin.
After Evo.
So I'm kind of curious because like I haven't finished the story. We were kind of like watching it instead of like actually in the game doing it. So we were just watching it on YouTube. Does it feel like the story is kind of more like a story, like kind of like an anime story, instead of it just being like a play through the game? It's quote unquote a story, but it's like half baked. It's not even fully done. I feel like from what I experienced, this feels like a kind of like how they did Blaze Blue, where they give you all of this. Like,
First of all,
together.
We ain't about to talk about how Blaze Blue story is just all over the fucking place.
No,
like,
no,
that was Inception before Inception was Inception, dog. Like, goddamn. Guilty ain't
that you were so scared that you didn't know it was a real bill.
Even from vanilla Blaze, like it was already.
I tried following
me.
that.
Yeah,
I mean,
Guilty
Grimoire.
Oh god, Guilty is not, but Guilty is not that far behind. Like following Guilty story is also kind of fucking tough. Like you have to know so many characters, and like understand some of their interactions to kind of really make it understand. The second story was a little bit more centric around biking and kind of like this coming to ages thing with Delilah and purpose and stuff. So it was like a little bit more condensed, but it was just still over the top. It's like, who the fuck are these guys? What the fuck is going on here? Why should I give a shit? And it was just like really all of that happening. So the movie could happen. Yeah.
No, I'm going to have to say, I'm really confused when I see the bed and I don't see the man.
Yeah, because he's dead. He died.
Why the fuck is the bed still moving?
Yeah, that's kind of part of the story too.
Fuck, man.
You see it there.
Wait, is it a part of the first story or
no? It's in the second story. You actually see it in the second story.
No, I know. I saw it, and that's why I was confused.
There's some interactions and all that. Yo, go watch the story. Just go watch the shit, get your details, and then have more questions afterwards. It's not going to help. No. Right. But yeah, so like I said, Delilah is looking more than likely. So we'll find out in March. Some expansion there. So look at that. We already got, we got some information. But the follow-up was the part that was great. So we've been expecting a patch coming up in December. It was already hinted at that this patch is going to hit a lot of characters. There's going to be a lot more coming. And they came through. They were like, hey, battle balance patches for all characters, network mode updates, and of course, crossplay implementation. So they're following through on kind of the schedule of things that they were talking about. When it comes to the balance patch itself, the balance direction, they talk about, specifically their kind of the thought process in it. Buff for characters other than the highly rated, removing the gap in character strength rather than making overall improvements or additions. So not just, I said it before, things like, hey, only buff, don't nerf. No, there's definitely some characters that do need to be nerfed, or some aspects that need to be nerfed. Maybe not crazy enough, but like enough to do the same thing that they're talking about. Just lower the gap. Like, don't make the gap so fucking different where an actual character in the top tier characters, they aren't just S tier, they're fucking like X tier. They're like the rate of them winning compared to the rest of the cast is just insane. Just fix that so that way that gap gets even tighter. Revise opportunities for landing high damaging combos, increase the base damage scaling for some attacks except for close standing S. I don't know what etc is, what other moves they're looking to kind of change scaling on, but I mean, close standing S, they shouldn't, because it's like, it's a proximity normal. It's different from your other normal ones. If you land that, especially if you're trying to meaty someone on Wake Up and stuff, you should get rewarded for blowing them up for that, for actually calling them out. That's kind of how it works. So if it scales it hard for something like that, especially like on counter hit, it kind of like sucks. Like, not gonna lie, kind of like, because there's a lot of people that can start combos from something like that. So if you start scaling it down, like, then the reward to that becomes like, yeah, it can become insignificant depending on certain combos or certain routes. Increased reward when the defender goes on the counter offense. Adjusted tension gauge gain and risk level depletion rate depending on the situation. So those two last lines are also just as important as everything else. Increase the reward when the defender goes on the counter offense. That's awesome. I'm trying to figure out how they're trying to implement that. Maybe something like, the higher your risk, maybe you can also, if you flip the switch, right? Because risk gauge, for those that don't know or need to get a refresher, risk gauge is basically your block, how much you're blocking, the block zone. The higher it is, especially when it hits that very end, the next move that your opponent hits you with, no matter what it is like considered a counter. So then it opens up routes without actually getting a full counter hit. And the scaling as well is different. Now the fact that they're saying, hey, we're going to adjust the tension gauge and the risk level depletion rate, in other words, like coming back down, because some characters can just lock you down. Zato is one. If Chip isn't positive, he can literally put you in a block infinite in the corner, and you're just gaining everything, and all it takes is for him to have one of the fastest moves which he has, which is a 2-framer. If your risk is high, bam, that's a combo hit. Like, you're fucking done. The tension gauge getting changed up, I'm assuming that's going to be for positive, and then the reward. But all that coming to then that first line. Increased reward when the defender goes on a counter offense. So I'm thinking, if your risk is higher and then you decide to stop blocking and do something about it, is there a reward that comes from that? Is it kind of a two-way thing? Like, maybe risk at a super high rate gives you, I don't know, maybe a higher window when you get an attack in, or slightly, like, I don't know, maybe a button becomes slightly better only if risk is all the way up. So that way you have an opening. That way if you decide to take that, to risk, no pun intended here, risk that hit and make a read to get the turn back, you can get rewarded. I think that'd be a cool idea. Once again, it's just something off the top of my head. I don't know what they're thinking of, but what are you guys feeling?
I personally would like to see if they're going to do this for risk level depletion rate. The only thing that comes to mind is, which is I think would be really cool, is if it hits the very tippy top of the risk bar, because sometimes people are just going to commit to like pressuring nonstop. I think if it hits the top of the risk bar and you get out and it starts depleting, as it's depleting, you're getting stronger and stronger for your attacks. So it's no longer as you're at the highest point, you're doing a lot of damage consistently, right? So instead of doing like 10% at, like, let's say instead of doing like 80% all the way through, you're doing like, as it's maxed out, you're doing 10%, then it's 20%, then it's almost like you're almost inclined to want to be offensive with it. So it's
yeah,
30,
that's what
40,
I mean.
50,
like it changes the attributes a little bit, so it gives you an opportunity. Like if you take the risk, you can get rewarded for that, right? For you changing the pace of being now on the defensive to the offensive. I like that idea. I thought maybe also tension. What if as you're depleting risk, you get just a little bit gain on tension for that amount of time it's coming down, that you can, like, if you're moving forward, maybe your gain is now 5% higher in tension, so you get a little bit more meter back. So now you have an opening for more for an RC or something like that, or for YRC or something like that, right? Like, or even when you're at high risk, maybe when blocking, it increases the rate of tension you get back, so you can YRC in return, right? Like those are ways that they could definitely use risk to kind of flip the script, so that way if you're in one side heavily, you can turn it around. Like, is that something you think, Gabe, like you'd like to see, like being a character that could get overwhelmed, now be able to kind of like take that chance to actually then get a reward for it if you risk your risk gauge getting popped?
So from this weekend watching the Japanese players, it was very different style of game that's being played. I mean, Giovanna won, and Chip was basically, also won almost. So like, they are faster characters that don't have health, but granted they get a comeback or so of some sort. I find that to be rather, it's tough to say. I think it's fine, but it's also almost like the comeback mechanic we didn't have in the game.
Yeah,
the damage is so high. Yeah.
But it isn't like a hard comeback mechanic, like X Factor exactly. or something, right? It's like you're only getting a comeback for this situation. Yeah, just for this situation, because you've been on the defensive this whole time. Yeah, and maybe because if you're afraid to press, like, it's gonna be a weird one to say that one. But let's say your opponent is just super aggressive. They just know the gaps. They're just not letting you. But you recognize that maybe an opening or a mistake, and now it allows you to kind of blow back only for that instance, because it isn't a permanent change, right? It isn't like I said, I'm taking X Factor as an example, because X Factor is a timed one. It's no matter what. If you're level 1, you pop, you get this amount of time. Level 2, level 3, you get different, it scales. Here, it's only if you're blocking. So if you're only been put on the defensive for so long, you decide to fight back. Your characters like your Pots, your Anjis, your Gold Lewises. Oh my God, that's gonna be terrible. Characters that kind of can get overwhelmed pretty hard. Being able to have an option to then fight back. Like, this is just on the character side, but then also the player side, it does affect them universally. But like, just on the character side, being able to pop back from it or have access to a little bit more resource to then be able to switch it, like, swing that back. Like, for only that situation, once again, only that situation kind of does like a weird middle ground where it isn't a true comeback mechanic. It's a situation back mechanic. Situation switch mechanic. Let's go with that.
Yeah, it could have instead of negative penalty, it'll be a defensive, I don't know, something. I was gonna say penalty, but that's backwards. But yeah, no, I think it would just be a phrase that shows up on the thing, like sort of like burst time or something. Again, we can speculate all we want until
the for sure. Yeah, we'll find out on the 15th what they're thinking of. But I do like the idea of, like I said, getting resources, even if it's for that limited amount of time, in order to then swing it back to your favor. It's kind of making Guilty Gear still be a much more offensive game. But technically, on a defense, this inherently gives you an out. So I would say it routes a little bit more on the defense mechanics, which I mean, I will not argue against getting more